This is the Besh and Brodcast, a glimpse in the Philippine flesh and blood community.
So
Okay.
basically, we've talked about the basics of cards, how to evaluate cards, but it gets more tricky when you have you're in situations where you have good value cards, but you don't know what to do. So, for example, in this one, you're playing as Bravo, and you have these four cards in hand. In themselves, there are good combos. There are good combinations for two card hands, three card hands, four card hands. These are all technically fine, but we're going to the last two slides. So for you, Justin, how would you evaluate this in a nutshell,
So like
in an isolated incident? If you get this,
yeah, like what decision, like which
yeah,
how do you evaluate like each play
uh,
line possible for this hand?
yes, yes,
Yeah. Okay. So I'll rule out like the obviously bad ones, which are like you can play the crippling without activating Bravo ability, but there's no point, right? So let's say so dominated crippling is like the first one. A lot of people see a lot of Bravos will see this hand and then they just see red and then say no blocks and then go wee. So so the crippling, so it's 11 4 card 11 plus the crush effect if it hits. So the crush effect is discarding two random cards. So that's like 6 value. If you put a little bit of value in the randomization, which I think there is, where like let's say their plan is to keep their one red, keep a red and then arsenal. What if you leave the blue in their hand? So I think there is some value there. So let's say you can assign that like a value of 1. So this crippling becomes a 4 card 11 plus 7 plus 6 plus 1. So that's 4 card 18, which is a pretty good rate, right? That's like 4.5 value per card. Um 4.5 value per card, but that's if it connects. The problem with this play into a lot of just everybody right now is that everybody is very prepared for this play exactly. It's because that play is so good, and you know that the Bravo can do that. Everybody will prepare for that. That's why everybody has D reacts when they fight against Bravo, pretty much. So if they have the sig below and like the armor, then so very typically you will have when you do this against a prepared opponent, they will just block with a card from hand, one piece of armor, and then a sig below. So then your turn is no longer a 4 card 18, it's a 4 card 11 because the dominate did not provide any value.
mm-hmm.
That's actually one of the main like complaints of a lot of the pros before this meta. That's why a lot of the pros didn't like Bravo is because his hero ability didn't provide any value. A lot of people said that the hero ability basically like does nothing, which is true some of the time. It is true like a decent amount of the time. Also like side note, that's sort of why I'm not super high on Bravo because everybody is always so prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's always so prepared for crippling. Whether it's not even having a D-react. A lot of the decks just have a bunch of armor right now.
Yeah,
The other guardians, the warriors. So like jamming the crippling, if you know it's not gonna connect, it's just a bad idea. A 4 card 11 is pretty below rate. That's too below rate, and it's also in a format so constructed where you are expected to be above rate a good amount of the time, and expected to be above rate with your power cards. And if you're using a power card and it's below rate, then you are just falling very behind, right? Uh, so that's one thing you can do with crippling. If they have no arsenal and they have no armor, then that's a different question. That's a different situation because you know you can jam the crippling and very 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 high odds. Or
that it
if you
connects.
know that it connects, or if you know their whole deck, then you just know that it connects. If it's a deck that you know does not run big D reacts from hand or does not run reinforce the line, then you know for sure that they'll connect. So sometimes in Bravo, what you can do actually is you can no blocks or use your armor, and then let's say they have a smaller hand, like let's say 2 cards, because they had to block something you played last time, and then they play out their hand like let's say they're a ninja or something, and they Kodachi Kodachi 5 you Kodachi Kodachi 4. you can take the Kodachis and then you wait for them to play their last card in hand. If they play the last card in hand, now you know they have no arsenal. Now you can value the crippling as if it were going to connect. Whereas while you're making the decisions to block, let's say the Kodachis, or if it's like a bigger hand, let's say it's like a 4 card hand, and they head jab you, they be like water you, right? You cannot expect them to not have an arsenal at the end of this turn. You cannot treat this hand as if it says 18 value. You have to be more flexible than that. So that's the crippling crush line. The terrace under line is, so if you terrace under and you swing with the hammer, that's 5, dominate, discarding 2. So that's 11 plus an arsenal. So 14. So it's like objectively worse because it's Titan's Fist. It's like so it's yeah, 5, 2 cards and an arsenal.
And no
Um,
randomization of the discard.
yeah, and no randomization of the discard. Plus all of the weaknesses of dominate that I mentioned. As well as the fact that it's on a smaller dominate, which is easier to stop. So if they have 2 armor, the Terra Sunder would get shut out, whereas the crippling would not. Um, there's also the Bravo very flexible Bravo line of just if you have to block 9, then block 9, and then swing with the Titan's Fist, right? 4. So the great thing about Titan's Fist is that it turns every card into Wounding Blow, which is a on rate play. Every blue in your deck is Wounding Blow. So if you just block 9 because they made you block, maybe it's like a turn where to stop Massive Momentum or something, or to stop like a Dawn Blade for 9 on hit go again, and they have no cards in hand, right? Maybe you just have to block the 9 because it's the play that makes the most sense. Well, your turn is still just 13 value, which is on rate. Um, that's a very very large advantage of the Guardian class is your ability to block when you need to,
Yeah.
and that's something that a lot of people really have to realize that a lot of the power budget in Guardian is that, so you have to
Mhm.
utilize it. You can't just say no blocks just because you see crippling. Even if the crippling will connect, actually, even if you know the crippling will connect, depending on how much you're taking, how much damage you're taking, sometimes it's still not worth it.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's still not worth it. Because sometimes, let's say you take like 12, then you dominate the crippling. Let's say it does hit. Then their turn is like Arsenal Pass. And then you look at your next hand and it's like 4 blues.
Four blues.
Yeah. So so then you start losing value there. So you really have to be careful with evaluating hands like in a vacuum. Yes,
Yeah.
of course this is 18, but that doesn't mean the next
It
turn
will
will
always
also
be
be
18.
worth that much, yeah. Another play you can do with this hand is the Rouse. So in this situation we have Titan's Fist. So it's a 7 into a 4 and an Arsenal. So that's a 3-card 11 and an Arsenal, which is which is slightly below rate, right? 3-card, correct? Sorry, no, that's above
Uh,
rate. It's above rate.
it's good.
Yeah, it's above rate. It's above rate with Titan's Fist. It's 11, so those 3 cards in your action point. It should be worth 10, but they give you 11, and then you get an Arsenal. Um, Rouse is a is a really good example of like a blue that is a power card and above rate, because in situations like this it's above rate already, but typically with Bravo you'll have Anothos, and with Anothos it'll be swinging for 6, so it'll be a 3-card 13
13.
and then an Arsenal. So that's very very above rate. That is over 4 DPC of the in a class that typically that does not get that kind of rate,
Mhm.
right? And it's on a blue also, so added flexibility. So that's another way to like that's another thing to think about, right? The fact that this play is off a flexible blue. It's a 3-card 13, so on its face value it's already a good play, but the added flexibility gives it more value. um the other play is also like blocking 6, hammering, and then Arsenal the Crippling Crush. I think that's all the lines that make sense. So you always have to evaluate these lines contextually based on what your opponent is doing. It's never It's never the same just because this hand is 3 blues and crippling.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's the main mistake that new Bravo players make. They see cripplings and three blues. It's very tempting to just play it out, and they think that they gain advantage, but it's
Yep.
not always the case. So
Yep.
that's
That
a pretty good
sorry.
discussion from Justin, actually. Yeah,
That and that and that and thinking that you have to pay two for the dominate every time.
yeah. I think that's another topic entirely. I mean, it's a long discussion that we could also have. But yeah, sometimes you just want your opponent to block. Sometimes
Oh,
you
just one more thing. So in this situation, what if we had Tunic? So if we have Tunic, another play is block 3 and then Tunic Crippling Crush, which is sort of the best way to play Bravo now, where um you sort of just play fair and you play fair and consistent the entire game, and then you get moments where you are given tempo. So for example, play like let's say they just play snatch here or something like that, and then you block with 3 block and your armor, then you tunic crippling. So now the value of actually just fast lang. The value of crippling crush, so it's 11. If it's dominated, the value is 18. Um if it's not dominated, it's 11, and if they block it comfortably, it's still 11. If they don't block it comfortably, if it made their turn worse, if they're blocking with 2 blocks, then the value goes up a decent
mm,
amount, right? Um, uh, that's a uh, that's a decent way to play Bravo now, where you wait for efficient plays that could maybe give you free tempo. Like let's say you block with a card and you play the Tunic Crippling, and now they block with their whole hand, and then they just pass. They just Arsenal pass, and then now your next hand is 3 blues and Crippling again. Now you get to dominate Crippling, and you didn't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay in the form of damage. Yeah, so there is value there in tempo. So and making them block. So you it's another like decently long discussion, but because they like physically have to block something, right? Or else their turn doesn't function. Their turn will typically be worse, and how much worse it is depends on the opponent's deck. If it's another guardian, then there's not much value,
yeah,
because they're just blocking with 3 blocks and then hammering. If it's a ninja and they're blocking with two
their whole hand.
yeah, their whole
Or
hand,
two blocks, yeah.
yeah, for 2 blocks. Yeah, because taking anything just means that they're gonna lose the card anyway. Then there's so much more value there. So you have to also evaluate the how much of a threat the crush effect is.
Yeah. Sometimes as a ninja, you just want to take it and just pray that you can get a good Kodachi for attack.
Yeah.
And you basically traded 11 damage for 6 or 7. Yeah, so something like that. So we now go to our final slide, and this is a callback to your finals against Nick Butcher, using Azalea. One of the most interesting plays that you did that turn was activate your Braziers of Belief after you already knew that it was a red, and then Enlighten Strike to hit the end dry. So in evaluating your own, it gets much more complicated when you have to evaluate also your opponent's board state
Mhm.
and where you are in the game. So what were you thinking at this point in the
Uh,
game?
yeah, if I remember, this was like decently early in the game. I think we were like maybe like
Turn
2030,
Yeah. You had
2030
pretty
or
high
30,
life.
somewhere there. Yeah, pretty high life. So that's another like value discussion also. This is also
Yeah.
like Dromai in general. And I guess illusions in general, but Dromai. When I started playing, I hated fighting Dromai because 5 is like, yeah, right, math. Wow, straightforward math. Like 4 better than 3, 7 better than 10, stuff like that, right? It's very easy to figure out
And
what the
then
best line is.
Kylora has become one card
Yeah, and then
12s.
they play like mirror guy and then like passing and then like my 4 cards now just like I can hit him in the face, or I can hammer the mirror guy and then IP myself like a couple of cards. Like the value, like thinking about the draw my value is like it's still like something really hard. But the gist of it is that it's a permanent, so it grants repeated value. How you evaluate the repeated value is like a whole other discussion really, because sometimes like you can treat it Yenderai as if it's swinging 3 every turn.
Yeah.
So it's 3 points every turn, but that's not actually the case.
Mm.
On the turn where uh turns where they don't have a starter, then the rest of their board, the rest of their board. Sorry, so Yenderai is 3 a turn, but what if they have more a bigger board? If you if they don't have a starter, then the rest of their board doesn't matter, right? You're gonna take the 3, and then that's it. It's just 3 value. If they do have a starter, then the rest of their board has value. Let's say he has like 5 ash wings, so then their turn is like 8 every turn if they get to cash in the board. Turns also where you have a popper. If you have a popper, the Yenderai is gonna die anyway, and the rest of their board doesn't matter unless they have Chromai. um, Another thing also is Azalea. If they have like 2 big dragons or like a decent sized board, uh, if I read them, then Yenderai may or may not matter. Let's say they have a Kailoria on board, and I read them. They might swing with the Kailoria instead of the Yenderai, or let's say like what's a more let's say like Vincerakai or something. They have Vincerakai. They're only gonna swing with their best dragon. In that case, the Yenderai did not provide any value that turn. If they get redded or they don't have a starter, they're just gonna swing with their best dragon, which may or may not be Yenderai. Uh, this is also how you can evaluate Ashwings. I remember earlier in this game, I rabbled an Ashwing because it was very
Yeah.
early. So uh, the main reason I decided to extract the Yenderai in that spot was that uh, it was so early in the game, and a lot of the Azalea games I lose versus Jomai are when I go face way too early, and a dragon, and then they just block and then swing with the dragon, block, swing with the dragon, and that dragon just runs away with the game, getting so much more value.
Yeah, it
So
becomes the Delver.
yeah, it becomes a delver. It becomes a delver that you chose not to interact with, no? Not one that you couldn't. You chose to ignore it, right? Yeah. So e-striking the Yender right here. So using the bracers. So like let's say uh so e-striking e-strike at that point was 5 go again, and then my bracers were 2. So let's say we can put the value of bracers at like active uh let's say flat 2, because I'll probably only activate it when I know it's 2, or if I want to know the top card of the deck. But if I want to know the top card of the deck, then it's no longer a flat 2 value. It may be 1, it may be 0. So I think the downside of that line probably puts the value of bracers at 2. So I used E-Strike and bracers, so 5 plus 2, 7, to clear Yenderai. I think that if I draw a popper next turn, it might it could just be for something else, because I think this hand, was I pressuring him a lot? I don't think so. I think he just gave me the ponder anyway. If I remember correctly, I think he was just taking damage for this hand. So if I draw a popper,
Yeah.
mhm,
I think he took the Rabble.
yeah. So if I draw a popper, it could just be for another dragon, which means that the Yenderai or the other dragon will stay in play. Whereas if I E-Strike now and I kill the Yenderai, I know I'm removing something that will like has a good chance of providing more than 7 value over the course of this game. Because in order for it not to provide 7 value, he'd have to have a dragon which I pop, and then I also pop the Yenderai. Right? Because this was so early in the game.
Yeah.
I think the fact that it's so early in the game and there's so much more turn cycles, then the value of Yenderai is a lot more. If he was at like 1, then this would be a different discussion. Right? Because the Yenderai now is just 3. If I'm killing him next turn, then the value of the Yenderai is just 3. There's no way I'm sinking 7 into something that's probably just gonna do 3. But because of how early it is, you can value engines based on how much more turns there's gonna be. Yeah, it's like a good way to estimate value against illusionist. You just sort of think of so this E-Strike is 7 damage right now. Will this Yenderai be more than 7 damage over the course of this whole game? I know that some people think of it differently, where they value the damage and they're pressuring and the pressure of like 7 damage to face of the Dromai just to shorten the game. But I think actually, well, in that case, Azalea is sort of comfortable extending the game against Dromai because you get more death dealer draws. Because you're not just somebody that has no long term value. You do because of death dealer.
Mhm.
So you can sort of keep up in the long game as long as you're not playing hyper inefficiently, right? So that's the main reason why I used the bracers to kill the Yanderai there because I think it would have had more than 7 value.
Yeah, your game was a masterclass of the matchup. You had a pretty good grasp of when to actually pivot to just go face. I think it was around the 15 life mark. Because
Yeah,
that was
something
when
like
you
that.
knew that you could threaten lethal every turn. Every turn.
Yeah. Threatening lethal and the fact that like I think the board was no longer like manageable. It's also
Mhm.
contextual based on your hand. If you don't have any go against, you're not gonna spend your whole turn clearing a dragon. You have to go face. Right. So this
Yeah.
is one of the turns where I did have go again. So I put a premium on the fact that this turn I can kill a dragon, so I probably should while I can. Let's say I do ignore it and I just go face, and then he plays another dragon, and let's say I do draw the popper. I do pop a dragon. The next turn may not necessarily have a go against source. So then I won't be able to clear dragons at that point. So I was
Yeah.
just doing it
Especially
because it's early and because I could.
yeah, and especially because it was Yenderai, which is one of the dragons that is more difficult for Azalea to actually destroy because
Yeah,
of
it's
the
only
endurance counter.
dying to a popper pretty much.
Yeah.
Or bolted
Yeah.
shot that's buffed, but like that feels even worse to sing in. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that is our last slide. And tonight was a very, very deep dive into the mind of Justin Ku and how he thinks about the valuations of Flesh and Blood, and not just the core value of each card, but also in the context of the deck as a whole, as well as the situation of that card against a particular opponent. So, any of you guys have something to add? We have talked a lot. This will be a 2 or 3 part episode.
Mm,
But I really did learn a lot this episode.
Yeah, this is fun. This is fun. This is
It
fun.
was
The,
so
the
fun.
mechanoid. The mechanoid.
Yeah.
math is fun.
Yeah.
Math is
Uh,
fun.
uh, Interesting to note. Uh, Valuations of cards was our one of the first things we talked about when we were new to the game, and we did the same thing. The pitch value, the attack, the defense, and then minus the cost. But what we had difficulty evaluating was go again, and
Mm.
you actually pretty much solved it by valuing the action point, and it's pretty fun, and this will keep me up later thinking about it, because now if you apply that to everything, it gives you a whole different perspective of the game. Yeah, so nice.
Carl,
Yeah, this is
Carl,
super fun.
Yeah.
Carl, you want to not sleep tonight. Have you read have you read I think it was Tarek Patel's tweet on how to value an agility token?
Oh my god.
Yeah.
So the value is the difference between playing the extra card from the action point versus blocking with it.
Mm, okay.
Anyway,
Yeah, it does make sense. But
mm,
agility tokens are valued more by characters that don't have inherent go again. Well, especially in limited, KO
mm.
doesn't have any good ways to gain go again except for agility tokens. Well, and wild drive.
Actually lost a
Okay.
game in draft because of agility token on his last 4 cards. He agile wind up on my turn, and basically just solves he solves the go again of his favors. I lost my last round draft last Saturday. And I think agility is like something that's more value now, but I think
Yeah.
really depends on what deck using it, because it scales up on what deck is using it.
Yeah, can you just imagine how the devs actually talk about this? Like, yeah, this card is 11, this card is 8. Yeah, you should balance this way, or something like that. And they probably have formulas at their office or something.
Yeah. Or
So
like
funny.
power budgeting also. It's pretty interesting also that like in CC all the decks feel like they have like 3 cards that are above rate.
Yeah. Anyway, Dustin, do you have anything else to add?
It was
We
really
had
fun.
so much fun. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun. The Mechanoid one was super surprising and super fun. That was a really pleasant surprise and yeah, really nice like blast from the past, like the Yenderai thing with the bracers. It was nice to see snippets of that
Yeah.
and talk about Azalea again.
Okay, so I think that's it for our episode tonight. Or episodes tonight. So this has been Carl, Franco, Alvin, with our special guest, the good guy, Dustin Koo. So, see you next time. Ano nga ba yung spiel natin? Nakakalimutan ko na lagi. Anyway.
I don't know. Like and subscribe.
Oh, yeah.
You can find Justin Ku at Ewan. Where
Oh,
do you
yeah.
find
How can
Justin?
we find you? You have a good Twitter account.
I'm at JustinKu22 on Twitter.
All right. Okay. Thanks, guys.